years ago.
What's up, guys?
I'm Connor.
And I'm Sydney, and welcome back to our channel.
So it's Thursday night at midnight, and we decided to make a video.
So with us just celebrating our 2-year anniversary, it's made us reflect on a lot of things and just discuss kind of how the past 2 years have been going and things that were different than what we expected. So we actually decided to make a video on things that no one tells you about marriage, things that we've discovered on our own, and things that were surprising to us even. We decided to get dressed up in our wedding attire, and the back of my hair is looking pretty funky, so you're lucky you're just seeing the front of this, but let's get into it. So as most of you have probably heard, the first year of marriage is the hardest. But our first thing that we learned in being married for 2 years is...
It's not hard. Pretty easy. A lot of people told us that the first year of marriage was going to be really hard. Just like
the hardest year.
Yep. Just like grooving in together, like finding out what each other's about and our mannerisms, stuff like that. And our relationship got so much easier, like literally the day we got married. When we were dating, it was a little like rocky sometimes, or we would argue, and I don't think we've been in like an actual serious argument since we've been married. We've been like frustrated with each other. Yeah, it's been a lot smoother than I've expected.
So this is obviously different for everybody, but I just think it shows that everybody is going to handle that first year a little different. And this is not to say that we haven't like went through any trials and there aren't difficult things that we faced, but knowing that God's blessing was on our marriage and everything that we faced, we were facing together as like teammates and partners. And now there's 2 people fighting for any situation that's going on. Like there's 2 people praying for it. Like you're a team, you're working together with God to make sure that like your lives are successful. And we've just found that it was easier than our dating relationship. And it's only probably even gotten easier with time. We actually didn't live together, or if you watch some of our previous videos, we didn't have sex before we were married. So everything that happened after we got married, we were just experiencing all the benefits of marriage that before we got married, we didn't get to. So we've just found like so much joy and so much fun in those first 2 years of marriage. And I mean, you're just hanging out with your best friend every day, and when you're engaged, you're gonna have everybody saying like, oh man, here we go, like never gonna get to hang out with your friends again, you're never gonna get to have any joy in your life anymore, like all the fun that you had when you were dating, that's about to be over. But we have just not experienced that. Every day at the end of my work day, I'm trying to get home to Connor as fast as I can. I'm excited to see him. We usually talk on the phone on our way home from work because we're excited to tell each other about our day. And I just think that God's blessing has really been on our marriage. And anytime I've like put it on my Instagram story saying like, girls, you need to know that like marriage can actually be fun and it can be such a blessing. Every girl that's replied to me and that said like, this is so true, like marriage is so much fun, like it's just a sleepover every night with your best friend, it's the best. Like, every girl that messaged me about that were girls that waited to move in with their husband until they were married. They're girls that waited to have sex until they were married. That's not to say that you can't have, like that your marriage isn't blessed if you don't wait for those things, but I just want to encourage you that like that's helped our marriage be so fun and so exciting, because like now we just get to experience all the things and that we didn't before, and it's been really cool.
One thing I'd like to add is that today's dating climate is so
toxic.
Yeah, toxic. That you like don't know what you're getting with all these different people, and you can date somebody for 3 months or 5 months or a year, and it might not work out, but in the end,
there's like no feeling of safety in it. There's no stability in it.
I'd say once you have that sure thing, it just allows you to be a lot more stress-free and focus on your relationship and really pour your whole self into it, just because you know that that's going to be there tomorrow, and that's going to be there next year, and that's going to be there 10 years from now.
You're not always like worried about, well, what if they leave? I have to do something to impress them.
Even if you mess up, like, you know, like, hey, like I might be in the doghouse for an hour, a couple hours, or hey, I made a mistake, but you know that that's not a deal breaker. So.
And you have that person's back, like they're there to defend you. So it's been a lot easier than what we expected. And we had to stop and think, even after our 1-year anniversary, we're like, didn't people say this was the hardest year? Because if so, like, we're about to rock this thing.
First year was like 100 times better than we expected, and the second year has been a lot easier even than the first year. So So the second thing we wanted to talk about is that the typical husband and wife roles that I think we were both kind of expecting coming into marriage didn't really align with what ended up happening. So my expectations were she was gonna do the laundry, the dishes, and cook for me.
And that's okay, because those are my expectations too.
Yep.
But we realize now we had those expectations because our moms stayed at home and they had all these kids. So we only saw it from the view of like our moms taking care of the family and the kids and the husband and everything like that, and the dad going off to work. And so it really like shook me when we first got married, because I remember crying like several weeks into marriage because I was like, I haven't been able to make dinner for you once because you come home from work and you're like hungry, and I'm just getting home from work too, and you're like throwing stuff in the oven and putting stuff on the stove, and I'm like, what in the world? Like, I was supposed to be making dinner for you every night.
More like microwave.
Yeah. But it's just like when you actually take a step back and look at it, it's like we're both working pretty much the same hours. We get home at the same time. Like, why does the work need to be more on, like the household work, why does it need to be more on one person than the other? And so we started to realize, like, we don't have any kids right now. I'm not a stay-at-home mom at this point in my life.
And I didn't think it was fair for her to have to come home and to start doing all the dishes and folding laundry and have like, 2 more hours worth of work as soon as she gets home, on top of making me dinner. So that was one thing I quickly realized, like, still sometimes she'll come home and do all that, but I realize it's not fair to her. So now when I come home, if I see the dishes need to be done, not every time will I do them, but a lot of the time I'll help do the dishes. It's probably 50-50 on dishes. And
you might be a little more in the lead on that.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that does the laundry though, because I'm like,
I'll start a load sometimes, but she is very particular on how things get folded.
he does the dishes a lot, and he honestly does a lot of the cooking, but that's actually because we realized that we don't always want to eat the same thing, and that like shocked us too, because we've only viewed that again from the perspective of like a mom having like all these kids sitting down at the table and the husband, and we don't have any kids, and like we had to step back and imagine, like, if our dad had requested something different for dinner, then all the kids would have also thought that they had the ability to suggest something different for dinner. So like the family just eats the same thing, and it'll probably be like that one day when we have kids and a family. But like right now we had to be like, oh, it's like, it's okay if we want different things for dinner. So
like I'll throw in a pizza and she'll eat grilled chicken, salad or something. And
yeah, we'll be like making different things for dinner, and that's a lot different than what I expected it to be like. It may be different in the future when like I stay at home with the kids or whatever, but for right now we do what needs to be done. We work as a team, and it
she
works
even takes out the trash sometimes.
She even takes out the dog sometimes now. So the third thing that I realized that nobody ever told me about marriage, but we just kind of figured out on our own, is if you want to stay connected, make your schedules match. So I'm really strict with my work schedule, and I only let them schedule me Monday through Fridays during lunch. And everybody always says, you'd make more money if you worked dinners and if you worked on the weekends. And I tell everybody, I don't care, because I like my husband and I want to get home to him. And there are other people that'll be like, well, I spend enough time with him. I don't really care that much. I spend all my time at home with him. But like, we're still so excited to be around each other that we make that our priority. Like, I'm gonna work the same hours that Connor works so that we can still connect in the evenings. Like, I would be so depressed if I was leaving for work when he was getting home. Like, I don't think I could mentally handle that. But that's just been really good for our marriage.
Yep. And that is, I think, specific for us, and it probably works with a lot of other people. But even if your schedules don't match, it's very important to have time that you guys set aside and you can dedicate. Hey, this 4-hour portion of our day, we're gonna be together, so don't make plans, or just have that in the routine where like, hey, whenever, this time of night or this time of day,
Exactly.
where we're like both off of work, we need to spend time together.
Exactly. We have friends that their schedules like don't match up at all, and it works great for them because they still like make each other a priority, or they have like days of the week that are specifically for them. And so it's cool that everyone can make that work, but you have to make each other a priority. And we do that by making our schedules the same because we have that ability and we have that freedom. But that's personally something that like we will not bend on, at least at this point in our lives, since we're not sick of each other
And
yet.
it doesn't have to be like 8 hours every evening.
Although it is for us.
Yeah. I can still go fishing if I want, or I can.
Yeah, I go to dinners with friends and stuff, so it's not like we're like psychotic about it or anything, but we really try and make each other a priority. And I think that's really kept us really well connected. And I think that's how a lot of marriages start to struggle, is when people are like, we were just going in separate directions. And it's always like, well, why? You couldn't figure that out. Like, you couldn't fix that earlier on? You didn't realize you were going in different directions?
So for the fourth thing, we think it's really important to be selfish. Not selfish people, but selfish for your spouse.
Yeah, no one ever really told us that, except my mom was like the only one I ever heard say that. So aside from God, your spouse is your number one priority. And I think a lot of people want to be like really active, and they want to be the top notch at work. They want to be really involved, and all those things are good to an extent. But we really prioritize each other. And I think it's important to tell people that too, because at work, like, people know the reason that I don't pick up extra shifts on the weekend is because I want to hang out with my husband. And people will bring that up at work sometimes. They'll be like, oh yeah, you don't work weekends, you're hanging out with your husband. And I think it's cool, because I think that can impact other people to be like, oh wow, like, they really care about each other. They really like hanging out together. And hopefully that influences other people to also find somebody that you enjoy spending time with. You don't have to dread going home. And it's not a bad thing to make the excuse that, like, sorry, I can't hang out tonight. I'm already doing something with my husband. It's not your boyfriend that you've been dating for a couple weeks. It's your spouse. He's your family member. Like, you can make those excuses and have them be valid. The enemy is always looking for just the slightest crack in the door to slide in and ruin your marriage. So if we're not making each other a priority and we're going in different directions all the time and doing our own thing, he's gonna be like, sweet, they're not really connecting, they're not really aligned. Like, I can really take over here and make them feel like they're not in love anymore and they don't care about each other. And so we just really want to work to stay connected. Similarly, our fourth point that nobody told us about marriage is that you really need to protect it at all costs, even if that means looking rude to other people.
I got a lot of pressure last year from my work to go on this skiing trip with all the girls from the office, and it's like all the guys from the field and all the girls from the office. And they were like really pressuring me. They were like, no, it's something that like you have to be at.
No spouse is allowed.
No spouse is allowed. I was like, okay, well, what if I pay for my spouse? And they said, nope, it's team bonding.
That sounds fishy. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Does that sound fishy?
Yeah. So a lot of people bonded, I heard.
And that is heartbreaking. I can't even handle listening to that. But
so I told them no right away before I even came home and told my wife this situation. But yeah, so you really have to like protect your marriage. And
he could have went, and I would have trusted him to not do anything inappropriate, and he might have trusted himself. What?
I was gonna say she wouldn't have liked it.
I wouldn't have liked it. Yeah, that's for sure. It meant a lot to me that he didn't go, but I would have trusted him to not do anything, and he would have trusted himself to not do anything. But why would you put yourself in a situation where you know there are impure things going on and sketchy stuff that is not healthy for marriages? Like, why would you even expose yourself to that? They get like really offended if you don't go to it. But I mean,
I think it's really generous of the owners, because they pay for your trip out there. They pay for like all your skiing and snowmobiling and your lodge and food. But if my wife isn't allowed to come with me, then it's a no for me, dog.
And I think it makes a difference if you tell people that the reason you won't go is because like your spouse can't come or something. Like, I think that shows people that you like are putting your spouse first.
So standing up for your marriage is always a really good way to be an influence in somebody's life.
And in the same way, I always used to feel so rude if a guy that I was even just friends with would like innocently be messaging me or like responding to my Instagram stories and things like that. I would always tell Connor like, well, I feel rude to not reply to them, and like, I don't want to hurt their feelings. And I started realizing that if he's ever not comfortable with me like replying to somebody, and if I've like told him somebody messaged me and I can tell he doesn't like feel great about it, why would I rather risk like his trust, or not even his trust, but like, why would I rather make him uncomfortable and like respond to this random person that I barely speak to instead of like doing what's best for our marriage.
And she still has her guy friend from college.
We're still good friends, and but Connor's friends with him too.
So when she got with me, I wasn't like, you just have to totally leave all that behind. Like, those guys can't be your friends anymore. Like,
Yeah.
They came down and visited like 2 months ago maybe, and we had dinner and stuff.
But I just started respecting a lot more what Connor had to say about people instead of being like, ugh, well, you just don't trust me. But like, now I care so deeply about him that I only want to do things that make him comfortable. And so we just work really hard to protect our marriage and make sure that if something is making the other person feel uncomfortable, then we want no part in it. I heard recently that if Connor was fulfilling 95% of my needs and I had 5% that in that moment I felt like wasn't being met, then I might meet somebody else out there who's just a nice person who's meeting just that 5%. And that's gonna be enough to make my mind wander and be like, oh, well, they're meeting the 5%, and he might be doing 95% of the things right. But I don't want to give the devil a foothold like that. So we've just really, really tried to protect it.
It's more like 99%.
Yeah, 99.9.
One piece of advice that I would like to give on that subject is that if there's anything that's coming in between you and your spouse, I would say it's time to cut that out. No matter how like small or insignificant you think it is, it's not worth your marriage. It's not worth causing a problem. I think you need to show honor, like going both ways. You need to show honor to your spouse.
That was really hard for me when we first started dating, because like coming out of like the singleness that we like are so exposed to in the world right now, it's all about like, you need to be you, do you, and don't let anybody stand in the way of that. And like, to an extent, I can understand that, but a lot of times that's at the expense of your marriage, and we are just not willing to risk that. Like, we would rather cut out things that like are frustrating to cut out, but if it's to protect our marriage, then like totally worth it. I do it every time. But anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. And if you like this video, go ahead and like it. If you learned something good from this video, share it with a friend. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our other videos.
And if we still fit, we'll be dressed like this in a year and doing another video and letting you know how it's going. So
But one of these days, I'm gonna be like, yeah, not wearing the dress, or I'm gonna have to like cut it out, cut it off at my waist. And you're not gonna know that I have like jeans on at the bottom.
yeah.
Woo! Comment below if any of these things surprised you, or if you're married, like which of these things have you learned also? What things did people not teach you about marriage that you've learned in the meantime?
And how did we step on your toes? Comment that. Tell us how we're wrong.
Give it to us. Give it to us.
And if anybody thinks that I'm short because we're always like about the same height when we're sitting down,
It's because he sinks into the bed more.
yeah.
Stand up. Yeah. We will see you guys soon. Don't forget what God thinks about you. It's way more important than what the world thinks about you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye. Our teeth look so white with that light.